Hello, I'm JW. This time we're having a look at the electroluminescent wires again, and this time we're actually going to make something out of them. And what we're going to make is a flat display which will basically hang on the wall, or in fact we're going to make actually 7 of these things. And of course we're going to be using the electroluminescent wire. Here it is, I saw that in the previous video, so various different colours there. And of course the driver units, a whole bag of those, and those are the ones that run on 12 volts DC. And in addition to this, we're going to need something to attach those to obviously form the actual shape of it. So what we've got here is some garden mesh. This is basically just steel wire with a galvanised finish, and it's actually the kind that's welded at the various crossing over points. As it says, welded mesh there, and you can buy this from pretty much any sort of garden centre or DIY type store. Again, a fairly cheap item. That one is welded because, as I say, it means they're actually welded where the points cross over. There is a type you can get which is twisted, which generally is a bit flimsy, so avoid that one. And we've also got some heat shrink sleeving, which this is transparent, so that's just for covering over the joins. And some copper tape here, self-adhesive, which is used to actually make the joins between the various colours, or one colour and the driver unit. Cutters to cut that mesh we saw a moment ago. And because the current requirements of this are incredibly low, although we're going to be making 7 of these things, we can actually power all 7 from a single 12 volt DC power supply. And this of course will be located inside, and then we'll just have the 12 volt DC going outside to the 7 panels. These things are totally potted, so again they're going to be reasonably weather resistant. And these things are only intended for use in the December period, so as long as they keep working for at least a month, then that's all we really need. Don't need these things to be working for months or years. Now here's the welded mesh, and apparently it provides security in your garden, although difficult to see quite how that would work. And for the size we actually got here is 6 meters by 900 millimeters, and the things we're going to be making in this case are actually 70 by 70 centimeters, so we will need to cut this down a bit. If you're going to make some of these yourself, of course you can make those any size you like, but just so happens in this case that that is the size which will fit where these things are going. So we'll just remove this outer securing wire from these things. So that's the thing unrolled there. So first of all we need to cut out a piece of this, which in this case is going to be 70 by 70 centimeters. And this stuff, say, comes on a roll, but with a bit of careful bending, it will actually then lay flat. So I've just cut a square piece there out of the roll, 70 by 70 in this case, but obviously you could make this any size you want. And it is quite a soft wire, so it flattens out reasonably easily. This is not totally flat, but bearing in mind it's going to be mounted on a wall anyhow, so it doesn't hugely matter. And the wire itself here, so it is quite bendable there, so it'll hold its shape fairly easily. And in terms of cutting it, just get the cutter there and it just snips through quite easily. Now the next thing then is to actually fit some of this wire to the mesh, and this was incredibly flexible as we saw previously. So the easy way to attach this and keep it in the shape we want is simply just to thread it sort of over and under the various wire strands there. And then of course it will hold its shape in there quite easily, and if you wanted to say just do a right angle turn there, then it's just a question of pulling it through to whatever shape you actually want. So very straightforward, don't need any other sort of additional fixings or anything. It's literally just a question of threading it through, and it will keep the shape that you've defined. And although you're going to have the wires obviously crossing over the front there, these are very thin wires, and bearing in mind this thing gives out light 360 degrees around it, so the fact there's a little tiny piece across won't actually make any real difference. Bearing in mind this is going up on the wall as well, it's going to be fairly far away from where people are viewing it, so you're not going to be seeing those little tiny bits or even noticing them. So what I'll do then, I'll thread the rest of this and some other colours into this sheet, and then we'll have a look at actually joining it together and soldering the ends. Right, now I've just started to thread this through here, and I see it's fairly easy to make various shapes with that, which will basically stay in place of their own accord, no other fixings required. Now this is the end of the green bit, and on the end here you'll see that there's just a plastic cap there, so it's just basically a glued on piece. And what we're going to do here is to join this green section to some of the red, so it'll basically be a continuous line. We only need one connection then for the actual power unit. So what we'll do is cut off the little end cap there, and then we need to strip the end of this, and we also do need to do the same with the red one, so just find the appropriate end of that. So as before, we'll just cut that little end cap away, and then we need to strip the wires here, and of course on the green as well, and obviously join them together. Here's the inner construction of the wire. So we've got the outer coloured covering here, this is the end of the green one, and then inside there's actually another plastic insulator there, which just managed to peel away. And then inside we've got the two very fine wires here, so just one basically on each side of the middle piece. And then in the centre we've got the larger wire, which is the phosphor coated one. So to solder to the middle wire, it's just a question of scratching away some of the phosphor coating. Then we can just go in and solder to that directly. And if we wanted to actually attach a wire to this, what we basically do here is to fold these wires back along the plastic coating, put some of that copper tape there, and then we could solder both those wires to the copper tape, and of course put a new wire going out to the power supply or the driver unit. In this case, we're actually going to be joining this one with another piece of the other type. So what we'll do is to prepare both ends like this, scratch away the phosphor coating, solder the two middle wires directly together, and then we can put a piece of heat shrink sleeving over that, and then again just join those two wires over the top, and then another piece of heat shrink over the top of the whole thing. Now it's proving quite difficult to show this on the camera, but what we've got here is the green one here and the red there. I've just stripped the ends both the same, so we've got the two outer wires there and the phosphor covered piece in the middle. And I've just removed a very small bit of the phosphor coating from the end here and just twisted that together and basically just folded it over as flat as possible. So that'll be the join for the middle wire. And then we're going to solder this and then just slide this piece of heat shrink sleeving over that join. So of course it's then insulated. And then we'll put the fine wires over the top of this. And then we've got another piece of heat shrink sleeving down over here, which will then put across the entire thing. So we'll basically get a continuous join and only a very small section where it's not actually illuminating. And then of course it just goes directly from the green to the red. And by doing this we can have several colours within the same panel, and then we only need a single driver unit for the entire panel, which also makes it a lot easier and tidier in terms of wiring. So we'll put a bit of solder here, put the heat shrink over the top, and then shrink all that into place. So that's now soldered with the bit of heat shrink just over the top. So we'll just shrink that into position. So that's now just heat shrunk over the top, so we don't have the outer wires then shorting onto that, because obviously that would cause a short circuit and wouldn't get any illumination. Obviously it would not work, as this relies on the two wires remaining separate at all times. It's basically the form of a capacitor. So we'll just mould those wires over the top of each other there. Now I've just folded the wires over there. I'm not actually going to solder these because they're very fine and there's not a great deal of point in actually soldering them because they're making decent contact. And then we'll just slide this other piece of sleeving over the top of those. Make sure it goes onto the coloured part at each end there. Now you could solder them if you wanted to, that may make a more permanent arrangement, but bearing in mind this is only for a fairly short-term deal. So we'll just slide that heat shrink over the top there and then just shrink that into position. So that's now fully covered over there, and so it does seal down at both ends onto the outer coloured plastic. So we can now remove this from here and continue installing it onto the frame to make the design that we want. Now this is the end where the red one happens to be, and this is the end we're going to connect the wires to attach to the driver unit. So what we need to do here is just to strip away the outer covering, and then just again as we did before, just scrape away some of the inner plastic there, peel the wires back, and then we need to attach obviously the little driver unit to that. And I'm not going to use those little plug-in connectors we had before because of course these are going to be outside, so we want it to be at least reasonably waterproof. So we're just going to solder the wires directly on here, and then we just attach the little driver unit onto the back of this somewhere, and then we've just got the 12 volt DC coming in from the main driver unit. So as we had before, we've got the two very fine wires here, the just plastic covering there, and then the inner wire, which of course is the phosphor covered one, and then we've just left a piece of the actual inner plastic on there. So just bowl those wires out the way, and then we'll trim off the unnecessary bit of plastic there, and then we're just left with the phosphor wire coming out of the centre, and then the two fine wires around the outside here. So next we need to apply some copper tape around this section here so we can fold these two wires back over the top of it. So we'll just wrap the copper tape around the outside. This is self-adhesive, so it sticks on there pretty easily. Now just press that down, and then the two fine wires, we just want to pull those back so that they're over the top of the copper tape there. And we've got a reasonable length, so I think we'll just wrap those around like that. So we've got the tape here with the wires over the top, a little bit of plastic left, and then our inner phosphor covered wire. Now I just need to remove the phosphor from the end of that. Of course that's where we're going to be securing the actual wire to. So just use the knife blade to scratch away the phosphorant coating. So of the wires from the driver unit, one we can just solder directly to the middle one here, and then the other one we need to actually solder on top of the copper here. So basically we're going to solder the two fine wires and the new wire all onto the copper braid at the same time. And before we do this, we need to put some of the heat shrink sleeving over the outside here so that we can obviously put that on once we've joined all the wires together. So that's the soldered joint here, so just got that one, the two wires just basically overlap together, and then here we've got the foil with the wire coming in, and then the two fine wires of course soldered all onto the copper foil. And the reason for the foil is just provides a support, because obviously you've got very fine wires there, and if trying to solder them individually it's very likely that they're just going to break off, but this way it makes sure it's actually fixed down mechanically to the plastic base, as the foil is obviously self-adhesive. So what we'll do now is just slide the heat shrink over the top of all of that. And again, arrange the wires, so of course this one is shorter, and then this one's longer, so that it all goes in a nice, fairly flat arrangement there. So next thing to do then, just shrink that down. So it's now insulated, and I've actually got a second piece here which we can again place over the top of that, over where the connectors go. So essentially now with a double layer, just making sure that's not going to expose the 100 volts or whatever comes out of the driver unit. So that's all carefully covered over there, and then it's just a question of tying this to the back somewhere, and of course then we'll connect this wire to the 12 volt supply later on. Now here's all of the 7 finished panels. Obviously didn't show making all of them individually because that'd be fairly boring. That's the one we were just making in the previous part of the video. I have actually added some little twists of wire at the corners basically to get the lines a bit more easily. And just the driver unit just tied on there with another couple of bits of wire at the bottom. So all 7 are here, various different designs here. So it's a bit difficult to see inside obviously because they're all stacked on top of each other. And as we saw previously in the first episode, if you turn them on inside you can't really see much difference in the colour. Anyway, so we'll do another video once these are actually up and installed. That'll probably be next week sometime. And until then, thanks for watching.